This is going to be a video. Hey, what is going on, guys? My name is Nathan, or NathanEP, and welcome to something very special. This is actually going to be my first YouTube video covering CEDH topics. Now, of course, I've made YouTube videos in the past, but I have started to work on my CEDH online presence on like TikTok and all sorts of things, and I wanted to make a YouTube video today to cover this big tournament that I was fortunate enough to play in. This was the Summer Classic 2. It was hosted by NorthStarCEDH, as you can see. It was featuring comedian MTG. I'll get more into him later, but this was a tournament that I actually really had an absolute blast with. There was about 128 players there. It was just an absolute lovely experience to be up there. I drove 8 hours to play in this tournament, and I just had a hell of a time. So I just wanted to like come on here, talk about it, talk about my rounds, talk about what happened, and just have a good time making this YouTube video. Can I just say that I appreciate all of these players that made it up to make it to this tournament. I had an absolute blast, especially with this top 16. Spoiler alert for later in the video, but I actually got to play in the top 16. But it was an absolute blast. It was absolutely like a really amazing and fun experience the entire day. Just really good vibes all day, and it was just an amazing tournament overall. I want to congratulate all these people, except all the VV pilots, because there were a lot of you. Disregard that was mean. Yeah, this was an amazing day, and I had so much fun, and I thank all of these players for showing up to make it as fun as it was, especially the top 16 though, because those people knew how to party. So I thought I would just jump straight into it. Let me find my pod. I believe I was actually 32. Yeah, so this was my first round pod. Pod 32. This was I believe I was going second. Yeah, and first seat was on playing VV to Jonathan. He seemed like an interesting guy, and didn't actually get to talk to him much. It was going VV, myself playing Kinnan, and then we were up against a Kalia of the Vast, and then an Atali player down over here. And I guess I never talked about the deck that I was playing that day. Let's go pull that up real fast. Alrighty, so longtime viewers of my pages, just like TikTok and I guess now YouTube, can probably have noticed that I play a lot of Kinnan. This is just kind of like my comfort deck. This is the deck that I love to bring up to tournaments, especially if I'm going to go to a 128 person tournament, just because I hadn't been to any tournament above like 40 players, I think is the max amount of players that I've played against in a tournament before. So like having this great experience to go play up in a 128 player tournament, I thought I would be best to just bring the deck that I feel like I'm the most comfortable with, the most comfortable playing, and the most comfortable trying to win with. And so that was my Kinnan deck. A few little like unique things about my Kinnan list is my Kinnan list is actually on the Devoted Druid Machine Gods effigy lines. I really like the Devoted Machine Gods effigy lines. Spoiler alert for the games that I was talking about. This actually came up 2 times in the entirety of Swiss, which is actually quite a lot, to be honest, giving me the ability to win the game, as well as there is a card that I'm currently working to try to see if it does really anything inside of our format, Verity Circle. This card actually didn't really come up in the tournament that day, the 128 player tournament, but then the next day, that following Sunday, I was able to play in a smaller tournament down closer to my home. There was one in Omaha, Nebraska that I got to play in. That one had like, I want to say like 24-ish players, and one of my rounds I was able to deploy a Verity Circle that was just drawing cards because people couldn't just like turn off their mana. So I was just able to get a bunch of value, accrue a bunch of value, and just deploy engines until I was able to win the game. So I really like Verity Circle. Other than that, my deck is just a normal standard Kinnan list. It's kind of running that no bad cards vibe that Freedom Waffle has recently been deploying, because I really like that list. And so I kind of like tried to throw my own spin on it with the Machine Gods effigy and the Devoted Druid and the Verity Circle, and that's just kind of where we're at. Okay, so back to the bracket. We were playing in a pod. VV was going first. He just went like land. I think he went Jeweled Amulet first. It goes into me. I actually mulliganed down to 5 this game. I kept 2 lands, a Commandeer, and 2 blue cards. One of the blue cards specifically being an Offer You Can't Refuse, so I had like a lower level counterspell. But I was really hoping that after mulliganing down to 5, that somebody in the pod would have deployed like a really powerful value engine and tried to grind out the mid-range, kind of like if somebody dropped a Heuristic Study or a Smothering Tithe fairly early on, that I was just gonna try to yoink that. That turns out playing in that pod, I shouldn't have done that, because they were all playing turbo decks. basically I drew, I played land, I passed, I got all the way back around to VV. He deployed his VV on turn 2 into holding up on turn 3. Turn 3, Kali of the Vast tries to play a Smothering Tithe, but before I even get to try to commandeer it, I'm so glad for turn order, VV decided to Swan Song it, and I wasn't going to just counter the Swan Song and then commandeer a Smothering Tithe and then sit there with no cards in my hand going into the VV's turn. That'd be horrible. So I didn't do that. Atali dropped an Atali, hit literally the worst pulls that you could hit off of an Atali. I believe he hit a Pact of Negation, a Noxious Revival off of his own deck. He hit my Birds of Paradise, and he hit Kalia's Entomb. So basically what he did was he cast a Birds of Paradise, Entombed a Squee, and Noxious Revival to Lotus Petal to the top of his library. And that is all his Atali did that entire game, which was tragic, but like kind of what you get for playing Atali. Goes into the VV player's turn. He casts a gamble. I probably should have countered the gamble, not really thinking that I wouldn't be able to counter what he grabbed later on, because I'm sitting there with that Offer You Can't Refuse as well as my Commandeer, thinking, oh, I've got this. If he goes and gets his Curiosity effect, I'll just like take it from him, or I'll counter it and he'll be screwed. I'll get another turn and we'll continue playing this game. He goes and grabs his Tandem Lookout, and I realized I severely made a mistake. And then he started storming off because I can't counter a creature, obviously. And then he just was able to pull the game, played this infinite combo that like killed us using something. I was just like, you've got your entire deck in your graveyard, why not just like cast Underworld Breach? And he's just like, oh yeah, I could do that. So then I was just like, yeah, you got it. Starting off the day, I went 0-1, not really that great of a record, but I did get to actually play this game live. If anybody actually wants to watch any of these live games, I actually got to play 3 different live games over the course of the day. I played round 1 live. You can see it inside of this video. I played round 4 live. You can watch it inside of this video. And then I actually played the semifinals live, which you can watch in this one. So all of these clips from NorthStarCEDH's Twitch, you can find them on Twitch, look them up, and you'll be able to see me play. I was playing Kinnan. You'll be able to find it if you just go based on which round is which. You'll be fine. Okay, so round 2 I was playing in pod 23. I was going 3rd this game. My pod composition was Tiamat, the 5-color like dragon food chain Draco Genesis deck was seat 1. My seat 2 player was playing Braids Cabal Minion. Shout out to that guy. He was funny to talk with. Into me sitting seat 3, obviously I was playing Kinnan. Into my seat 4 player was actually playing Sisay, but not really a version of Sisay that I've played with in a long time, ever since the bans. They were playing Sisay Gigantha as companion, and so I haven't really seen that. So that was a really interesting deck. Honestly, that player was absolutely going to destroy me if what happened didn't happen that game. So let's talk about it. Okay, so let's talk about first about the hand that I kept for this game. My hand actually was Elvish Spirit Guide into Soul Ring into Talisman of Curiosity into Finhorn Elf turn 1. I kept a 0 land hand just because I saw all of that mana potential from those rocks in that dork, and I was like, let's just send it. We kept my first 7. I looked at it and I was just like, this is perfect, because my other cards in my hand were a Flusterstorm, a Mindbreak Trap, and a Machine God's Effigy. Now, traditionally, Machine God's Effigy only really goes infinite with the Devoted Druid line, but what I really liked about it, having it inside of that game, is I was up against 3 black players, which meant that if an Orcish Bowmaster landed, I was going to get absolutely fucked by that Orcish Bowmaster. So if an Orcish Bowmaster was going to land from one of my opponents, I thought that having the Machine God's Effigy inside of my hand to play down, copy an Orcish Bowmaster, and then start dishing out the damage myself while having an unbowmasterable Bowmaster seemed fairly good. So, and also just Machine God's Effigy as a clone spell, as a mana rock, it's just fairly good, fairly decent. So going into this game, I think the Tiamat player, he basically went like land, I think like 0-drop rock, I don't remember exactly what it was, pass into Braids, kept a hand that played that tapped black land that like you tap it and you can like, it comes in tapped. I think it has like 2 charge counters on it. You can tap it for 2 black by removing a charge counter or something. I can't remember exactly what it does, but that's like the gist of what it does. Into me, I untapped, I upkeep, I drew a Mirage Mirror, the card that makes my infinite Basalt Monolith into infinite colored mana. And so I just deployed my hand. I went the Spirit Guide Soul Ring into the Talisman, into the Elf, everybody got scared of me, and I was like, I don't have any lands. And they were like, yeah, you're right. They should have been scared of me. I don't know why that worked. Passes over to the CEDH player. They go land, mana vault, pass. It gets back around to me. I can't remember exactly what happened. I think Tiamat just played another land and passed. The Braids player untapped, played a land and passed over to me. I just cast Kinnan using my Elf and my Dork because I still didn't draw a freaking land. And then I tapped my Soul Ring to cast that Mirage Mirror, specifically because I thought that it would be good sacrifice fodder to the Braids that was definitely coming down next turn. And so then I just kind of passed. Goes into CEDH's turn. Turn 2 CEDH just goes, all right, well, here's a land, and then here, blah, 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 Chromatic Orrery. And we're like, whoa, Chromatic Orrery, why? And so they dropped a turn 2 Chromatic Orrery into tapping it, casting a CEDH, and then also with the 2 mana floating, cast a legend. And from here, I'm thinking, oh my god, I am going to die. This is going to kill me. This CEDH wins next turn. Into Tiamat does like literally nothing once again. I have no idea what he was doing. Into end step, the Braids player just like answers my prayers and goes, well, since I have the mana, I'm gonna tap 3 and I'm gonna cast this opposition agent. And I was like, praise the Lord be. Thank goodness that this man is here to stacks out only this CEDH player. And I was so thankful because that CEDH player was just like, no, there go all of my plans. CEDH basically, his hand was just tapped out. He had like nothing he could do, and I'm sitting there and I'm just like, yeah, me and my no lands. And it was really good for me, honestly. Goes into Braids' turn, they untap, they play a land, they tap out, they cast Braids. Goes into my turn, I sacrifice that Mirage Mirror just like I was thinking about it. I still didn't get a freaking land. I think I drew like a rock or something, I can't remember. I then played something and passed the turn holding up a Kinnan activation. To then CEDH goes, plays a thing, passes the turn. Tiamat then finally untaps, does a thing, plays a freaking Smothering Tithe, just like drops it down on the table, and we're like, okay, well, that's a problem. And then going into the Braids player's turn, I convinced the Braids player to sacrifice his Braids to his own Braids. And the reasoning behind that decision was I was just like, well, hey, think of it this way. This Braids is going to start making yourself, myself, and CEDH start sacrificing permanents that are actually like on our boards and like value to us, while there's a freaking Smothering Tithe, which means if you force me to sacrifice my mana here, I will not be able to pay for the Smothering Tithe, and then the Smothering Tithe player will just sacrifice treasures, right? So in a world in which he's unpunished and actually is rewarded for you making me sacrifice my lands, I almost wonder if it's just worth sacrificing the Braids here to take the Smothering Tithe kind of offline. And then I agreed that if he did sacrifice his Braids right then and there, that I would pay for my Smothering Tithe. And so he sacrificed the Braids. So I don't think it was necessarily wrong for him to do it, but the thing was, is then he sacrificed his Braids, he paid for the Smothering Tithe. He was now down to those 2 lands because he ended up having to tap and sacrifice his 1 swamp to cast the Braids last turn. So then he just plays a swamp, and he literally had nothing else he could do that turn, so he just passed the turn to me. Passed the turn to me. I did a Kinnan flip. I think I found like an Elvish Mystic. Literally just passed again. CEDH still locked down, but I paid for my Smothering Tithe. CEDH ends up just paying for their Smothering Tithe. Smothering Tithe player's just like, well, I didn't make any mana off my Smothering Tithe, so I'll just pass. Braids takes their next turn. They tap, they pay for the Smothering Tithe again. Comes to my turn. Before my turn, though, in the end step, I do a Kinnan flip, and I find a Devoted Druid. And if anybody remembers, I have a Machine God's Effigy in my hand at this point, and so like I calm myself down, but I'm definitely thinking I'm gonna jam this win. Nobody's presented like anything. Like, first of all, these decks are like, I've got 2 5-color decks, right? Tiamat doesn't have any blue mana on his field because we keep paying for the Smothering Tithe. CEDH has a very empty hand, and this is a mono black player, so my chances of like winning this jam right here were fairly good. So I then untapped, paid for my Smothering Tithe because I thought paying for the Smothering Tithe to keep him off of blue mana, but also just like as out of the courtesy of saying that I would pay for the Smothering Tithe if he got rid of the Braids. It goes to my main phase. I try to slam a Machine God's Effigy. there's no response to it, turns into a Devoted Druid, make infinite mana, do the thing, get infinite Kinnan activations into Thrasios, and then I won it from there. And I think, honestly, I lucked into that win. I'm not gonna like sit here and just be like, yeah, my Kinnan flip with skill there. Now, I will say that me being able to politic him to sacrifice that braids was kind of cool in my thought process. But I mean, like, what else was he gonna do? He was either gonna sacrifice his lands or his opposition agent. I don't really think he was sacrificing that opposition agent given what Sisay's board looked like. And so I think maybe sacrificing the braids there just to keep everybody kind of in the same-ish boat of what was going on seemed okay in my thought process. Maybe I'm not a braids player. I personally don't think that the deck is really that there, right? Because I mean, just like mono black stacks is not good, but to each their own. But then I ended up after this round being 1-1, which actually ended up being really nice going into the next round because not very many people who already had a win took another win. Alrighty, so this was actually an interesting round going into round 3 because a couple of the rooms were like cut off from the main room. This one being a room that was cut off from the main room. So multiple of my opponents, because they were pairing based on record and not just like true Swiss, which is fine, especially with 128 people. But what ended up happening is the top 3 pods just ended up straight drawing. What was interesting about that was because inside of my pod 5, I was actually asking if anybody just wanted to draw because I thought just like a win and a draw. Personally, I thought that the bubble was going to be 2 wins and a draw, and it ended up actually being 2 wins and 2 draws, and nobody with 2 wins and 1 draw made it in. Like everybody that had 2 wins and 2 draws made it in. So the bubble was exactly 2 wins and 2 draws, or 12 points is what they say, 5 points for a win and 1 point for a draw. And so I was under the impression that I only needed 11 points. And so me sitting there with my 5, I was like, well, if I can get up to 6, then I've got 2 rounds to try to win a game to lock myself into top. So I asked if anybody wanted to draw, and one of the other players just told me no. He just was like, no, I'm not gonna draw. I don't see why. And this game was actually interesting. Okay, so let's talk about it. We've got seat 1. We had a player playing Grist, the black-green planeswalker. Really cool deck. Really cool guy, first of all, but really cool deck. He was very chill to play with. This Eric guy, I cannot say that I had a joy playing against this guy. He was one of those like Rogside players that was super, super technical. He kind of just decided to, like, we were all like cracking jokes and just like having a good time, especially this Jake guy, and just like all 4 of us were having a good time. But like the second that he needs to like think about an action and like I'm just like making small talk, he's just like, guys, I need the table to be silent, while he spent 20 minutes thinking about a mystical tutor that grabbed an ad nauseum. And I'm just like, okay, maybe I don't play enough Rogside, but I feel like if you're gonna get ad nauseum, I feel like that's a no-brainer. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. He ended up taking like 60 minutes of our 80-minute or of our 85-minute timer on his turns, and that really annoyed me. If I didn't have as good of a start as I did, I don't think I would have been able to win that game. I really think I should have called the judge for slow play on this guy, just because he took an excruciatingly long amount of time to make his decisions, and I didn't want to feel like the jerk at this table because we started talking in this table just like all like nice, and we started conversating, we like cracked some jokes, and then the second like the game starts, this Eric guy is just like gets super, super serious about his game, and he's thinking super, super hard. And like, I get it, you want to win a game, and I honestly want to win these games, but that does not mean that I hold my game hostage for 60 minutes, like half of that time thinking about my plays, right? And there's got to be some actions that we got to be taking, but it's fine. It was cool. I ended up mulliganing down to 5 again, but I think what I kept was literally just like land, Soul Ring, Mana Vault, 1 ring, and I think I had a Chain of Vapor as well. And so I was just like, well, I'm gonna dump my hand into this 1 ring, and then if I get a couple more turns, I'm probably just gonna win off of this 1 ring. The Rockside player had a fairly good start where he just goes like land, Rog, not Paradise Mantle, land, Rog. Yeah, no, it was land, Rog, Paradise Mantle, tap put the Paradise Mantle on the Rog. He also had a Chrome Mox that imprinted a Mnemonic Betrayal, which then in the end step going into his turn, the other players didn't really do much. Cast the Mystical Tutor. Then he spent 20 minutes thinking about it, grabbed his Ad Nauseam, cast his Ad Nauseam main phase, flips one of the worst Ad Nauseams I've ever seen in my entire life. Literally sculpts a 7, passes. I untap, I draw a couple cards, I play some stuff, I pass the turn. Blue farm does nothing. I forgot to mention who my last guy was. Sorry, Jake. Jake was, Jake. Wow, I just insulted this guy. I'm so sorry, Jack. Jack was playing blue farm, and he seemed like a really sweet guy. He was very fun to talk to, very fun to play with. I absolutely appreciated Jake a lot. That still says Jack. I am so bad at reading. I'm so sorry, Jack. But Jack unfortunately kept a hand that was literally just like, I believe it was turn 1 Esper into no other lands, and he didn't really get any other lands, so he just kind of didn't really have any other plays. Grist actually went turn 1 Skull Clamp, and then like into turn 2 Grist started grinding. I thought that was sweet. It was so cool. But once it gets to Rog's 3rd turn, he goes for a tutor that goes for the thing that goes and gets the Underworld Breach. He tries to go for the Underworld Breach. He takes about, literally, he took like 25 minutes thinking about his actions, calculating it inside of his head, thinking about which things he has to do, and then he goes thing, Underworld Breach, and then the Grist player is just like, well, I've got this Abrupt Decay from the Underworld Breach, and the only counterspell that he had, which not even a normal counterspell, he would have needed a Mindbreak Trap, was a Daze, right? And so then he gets stopped and he's just like, I'm dead, and he passes. At this point, there's now 16 minutes left on the clock, and we just ended his turn 3. Fortunately enough for me, I get to my turn, I tap my One Ring, and I see a win attempt with a Hullbreaker Horror, so I try to go for it. I should have absolutely killed the Rogside player because he was at 1 life at this point, and I had a Kinnan without Summoning Sickness, and he didn't have a board, but for some reason I wasn't really thinking about it, so I went for it. To then my thing. So I played a Hullbreaker Horror, and then I cast a Chain of Vapor, targeting one of my rocks. Hullbreaker Horror, bounce a you know what? Sorry. Once again, Jack did something really important for this game, which was he went turn 1 Deafening Silence, turn 2 Esper Sentinel. I think he had a mana rock of some kind. I believe it was Mox Diamond. So the Deafening Silence was actually kind of the reason why the Rockside player wasn't able to push as hard as he could. But with my current board state is I tapped out for a Hullbreaker Horror, and then I had 1 extra mana floating, exactly 1, cast a Chain of Vapor targeting my own Mox Amber, trigger my Hullbreaker Horror to then bounce the Deafening Silence. Because if I would have done it, Hullbreaker Horror bounced my rock, Chain of Vapor bounced the Deafening Silence, then he would have sacrificed his land and bounced my Hullbreaker, and I would have been stopped. So I did it this way, but then what ended up happening is my my Chain of Vapor was getting dazed by the Rogside player that I just should have killed, which ended up putting me about a turn behind, because what ended up happening is I had to cast a counterspell, my Force of Will, target the daze, and then because of that, the blue farm player did have his own Chain of Vapor ready to bounce my Hullbreaker Horror, took me off a turn. Then I went to combat, then I killed the Rogside player because I was like, grr, die. It goes into blue farm player's turn. He literally, all he's got is a Dark Writ into a Necro to sculpt a 7 to try to interact with me on my turn. Grist sets up a really, really sweet win. What he does is he skull clamps his creatures into having too many cards in his hand, holds up 3 mana, moves to his discard, discards his Protean Hulk, and he's got a Necromancy in his hand, which means that he can win the game in my end step as long as I don't present a win, or at least I don't present a win that is successful. Goes into my turn. I tap the One Ring, I draw Manamo, I play Manamo's land for turn, I then untap the One Ring, and I find exactly what I need. After I tap that, I've got 10 mana on the board, I drew a Basalt Monolith, and I drew a Mental Misstep, and I was really, really lucky with that One Ring again. Once again, my game is coming down to luck, which, I mean, you gotta be lucky in order to win this game. But I will say that it wasn't really a skillful thing that I bumped into when I tapped that One Ring that second time into finding exactly a Basalt Monolith and a Mental Misstep inside of that. Most of my draws were lands, though, weirdly enough, so maybe it wasn't that lucky. So then I tap out, cast a Hullbreaker Horror. That can't be countered. Hullbreaker resolves. I then tap exactly 3 more mana in an attempt to cast a Basalt Monolith. And here's where it gets interesting, right? Is because casting the Basalt Monolith triggers my Hullbreaker Horror to bounce my Mox Amber. If he counters my Basalt Monolith here, then I just win with Hullbreaker Horror. If he has a way to remove my Hullbreaker Horror here, then I win with my Basalt Monolith. I've got a filter in my hand and a couple more colorless mana rocks. So then I could start floating infinite colorless, play some color down, and then like tutor up a Thrasios using, I think it was Invasion of Ikoria in my hand. And so I was giving him this option between you have to either stop this one or stop this one. And if you can stop both with what you just Necroed for, then you got me. He goes, Force of Wills my Basalt Monolith. I'm fine with that. That's fine. Attempts to then Swords to Plowshare my Hullbreaker Horror. Once again, the mental misstep that I just drew, just magically, came up in such a clutch position where I was like, well, I've got this mental misstep. Anything else? And they just didn't. And my Hullbreaker takes off, make infinite mana, present a combo, kill them both. That's just kind of how it happened. Yeah. There's just nothing really I can say about that. Alrighty, so going into this game was actually a very interesting one because David was actually the guy that invited me up to play that day. He met me on TikTok. He followed my TikTok. He was commenting in my TikToks, and he was just like, hey, we're having this big tournament and comedians coming up. And I'm just like, 8 hours, that's a long time. And then I thought about it, and I was like, I really want to go. So what I ended up deciding to do was I went. Me and my buddy got a hotel room, and we went up. We had a great time. It was such an amazing time, and it would not have happened if it wasn't for this guy. So thank you to him. He actually made the top 16 with me because of this game. And so let us talk about it. So for the first time today, we finally get to go first. We are seat 1 inside of this pod. It was me on Kinnan. This Brandon player, I believe he was playing Timnacron Blue Farm. So a second Blue Farm player today. David was playing Zamone. Oh my gosh, let me pull this up. Oh my gosh. Zamone. Mystery Unraveler. This deck is so sweet. It's just running a bunch of like creature combos that you're able to just like loop and loop and loop and loop with a bunch of like landfall-esque like important pieces, but not like insanely important pieces. But then it's just running these like cool, sweet like Kinnan tech cards. Like this Teferi, this Wandering Archaic, Consphinx, Hullbreaker Horror, because the way that Zamone reads is that whenever a land enters the battlefield, if it's the first time this ability is triggered this turn, you manifest Dread, and then any other time that a land enters the battlefield under your control, you're able to just flip over a permanent, which means if you manifest Dread the first time, hit like a Hullbreaker Horror, a Teferi, or a Void Winnower, and it's like this, then you're just able to, for the rest of that turn, hold up a fetch land and just be like, all right, well, in response, now everybody can't cast spells at instant speed. What a freaking legend taking this to a 128 person tournament. What an even more absolute legend to top 16 with this thing. Oh my god, he was amazing. I loved his deck so much. All the props to David. That was sweet. And our game was literally hilarious. So, and then I guess I should talk. Zachary, this fourth seat, was playing Redshift, which I don't think he got too far into it, but yeah, here we are. He was 41st. Redshift, if you guys are unaware with what Redshift does, it costs a red and a green for a 2/3 legendary creature Goblin Pirate has Vigilance. It says Pilot, not Pirate. Don't take that out of context. And he's got Vigilance. He says he can add X mana of any one color where X is his power. Spend this mana only to activate abilities. And then he's also got this as Exhaust ability where you can pay 12 and put any number of permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield. So the way this deck kind of operates is you kind of make Redshift's power go up and up and up as time goes on, while you play cards like Magus of the Candelabra, Candelabra of Tawnos itself, or this card was really sweet. This was the one that he had in our game. This Leaf Caller. just being able to filter your mana that can only be used for activated abilities into unrestricted mana to cast your spells. He was actually like popping off in this pod. He was doing a lot, and I mean a lot. And so this is a really sweet deck where you're just able to play a bunch of like these really sweet cards. He's playing Godo. I didn't even see that. Pump spells to make his redshift bigger. He's able to play Legolas's quick reflexes. I really think this deck is sweet. And I really applaud this guy for taking this to the tournament because it was really sweet. One of the win cons that he was running was Aggravated Assault, a card that he tried to cast in one of our games, and we ended up having to stop him because if he, with his Redshift being so big and an Aggravated Assault hitting the battlefield, if he tapped his Redshift for 6 and then untapped it using Aggravated Assault's ability, he was about to float infinite mana, which was bad, which was really bad. So that was sweet though. Anyways, going into this game, I kept a fairly okay hand. It was a hand that like went land, rock, plays Kinnan into like, what did I do? I can't remember exactly what I did, but it was a bunch of mana rocks, and it was like a One Ring, I believe. I think it was. It was like a fairly early okay-ish One Ring, and it had a couple like artifact tutors to go for the Basalt Monolith to maybe put my win on the stack, and so I thought this hand was pretty good. It wasn't very good against a turn 2 Collector Oof that came out of the Zamone's board that sat there the entire game. Basically, Blue Farm started grinding, Zamone started grinding, Redshift started grinding. I sat there in pity. We kept playing. Blue Farm, the most notable things that happened in this pod was Blue Farm tries to, he went cast an Orcish Bowmaster, blow something up, I can't remember, into attempting to cast a Wheel of Fortune, and he politicked for about like 10 minutes on why he should be able to keep his Orcish Bowmaster in play and have this wheel resolve, and we're just like, no, you don't get to do that. And then what ended up happening is Redshift, Legolas's quick reflexes, blah, 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 his Redshift tapped it, blew up the Orcish Bowmaster, and the Orcish Bowmaster was like, that was the wrong move. I needed to blow up Zamone's board. We're gonna lose now. And I'm just like, I don't think that was the wrong move at all. I feel like if we gave you 21 pings, you are going to remove all of our boards and then start killing us with a 21-21. I don't know. What ended up happening is I wheeled into a fairly decent hand. It passes over to Zamone's turn. There's about, I want to say like 15 minutes left on the clock. I started politicking my head off because there was no way I was making it back to my turn, and there was also no way that there weren't going to be win attempts from Zamone and Redshift going into my turn. So what I had to do was I had to cast a spell that bounced the Collector Oof to then tap all my rocks into playing a Valley Flood Caller, into playing some other stuff. My Valley Flood Caller and my Birds of Paradise started working really well together. I then cast a Rhystic Study, and I was like, all right, guys, I think you guys should start feeding me some cards so that I can help protect against this Zamone and what he was trying to do. And it took about like 10 minutes of being like, guys, please, we're going to die right here. And we were dead. They just didn't see it. They finally let me do it, and I was finally able to get a Talon Gates of Muldara, which was able to then come down and phase out. Oh, what did he do? Oh, yes, we were fighting that entire time over his Wandering Archaic. He tried to cast a Wandering Archaic, and with that Wandering Archaic and play, all of my counterspells and all of their counterspells were going to be like null and void. We weren't going to be able to use them. So I was like politicking. I was like, guys, we aren't going to be able to beat this Wandering Archaic. Please feed me cards into this Rhystic Study so that I can find a card that will like stop this Wandering Archaic. And so they fed me into cards. I finally find a Talon Gates of Muldara, was able to activate it to, after the Wandering Archaic resolves. We let that resolve, activate it, put it into play, phase out the Wandering Archaic, so that way we had a counterspell to stop his Finale of Devastation, which was absolutely going to grab a piece that was going to make an infinite combo and win the game. And from there, he goes, do you guys want to draw? There's like a minute left on the clock. And we were like, yep. And so I got my draw. I think David was probably happy with that outcome. Obviously, he wanted to win more, but that put him at 2 wins. And 2 draws going into the last round, which was really sweet because that meant basically he was locked for the top 16 just from that draw. I'm sitting there with 2 wins and a draw thinking, oh, well, if I can get my next pod to draw with me, then I'll be locked and it'll be great. that didn't work. Alrighty, so going into round 5, I am 2 wins, a loss, and a draw, and I'm really hoping for a draw here. I sit down at the table, I'm immediately 4th seat. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Please let us draw. For my seat 1 player to be playing Magda, my seat 2 player being playing another blue farm, so that was 3 blue farms in a row, keep that in mind. But this was also a blue farm player that won the entire event, right? This is a really strong player, and he's sitting at 2 wins and 2 draws. And this last guy sits down, and he's playing Rocco. And so Magda and Rocco both have records that if they won this game would put them in the top 16, but they needed the win. And also Ethan was like, well, I'm gonna try to win because in my first game I drew with my buddies, and if I win this, then their opponent win percentage goes up. And I'm like, no, please just give me the draw. But it didn't happen. I ended up having to play it out. I kept a second 7 that was absolutely nuts. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was literally like turn 1, rock, 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 turn 2, Ristic Study, Kinnan, rock. Or it was more like turn 2, Kinnan, rock, Ristic Study. Magda mulls to like 4. Blue Farm keeps his first 7. Rocco keeps his first 7. And the game's afoot. Magda didn't keep any colored sources, weirdly enough. But, I mean, he did mull to 4, so give him some credit. He goes, draw card, land, Grafdigger's Cage. And we're all immediately like, great. Because the Underworld Breach from Ethan's deck was off. The commander from Rocco was just, that's it. There goes his commander. He needs to remove that now. And my Kinnan flips are now off. Luckily, I kept a hand that was Ristic Study intensive, and I'm like, okay, I'm feeling a lot better about that. Goes to Ethan, goes land Esper Sentinel pass. I don't remember exactly what Rocco did. Gets to my turn, I dump my hand out into all those rocks. I didn't pay for the Esper Sentinel just because I played rock, 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 right? And so I was like, well, I mean, he can have 1 card, I'll be able to play all these. Magda still didn't have any colored mana, goes like Ancient Tomb pass, I think is what he did, into Ethan untapping, playing this, Ristic Study. And I'm like, oh, so it's this game. It's going to be Ristic Study versus Ristic Study. All right. I almost want to just ignore this Rocco player. He didn't really feel like he had like good vibes ever since that Grafdigger's Cage came down. He just kind of was out of it the second that touched the battlefield. He was just like, of course, blah, blah, blah. And like, I don't mean to hate on players, but like, come on. Well, let's play the game. But anyways, he like played a land pass, comes back to me, I draw a card, I play Kinnan. I think I fed him 2 cards in order to play my Kinnan into my Ristic Study, but then the Magda player played cards, fed me, I think paid for a Ristic Study. It goes into Ethan's turn. Ethan then feeds me 1 card by casting a card to bounce my Ristic Study. Kind of an interesting play. I think as tempo plays go, that's not a horrible idea to just bounce a Ristic Study to then dump out a bunch of crap, which then he did dump out a bunch of crap. He went like to Crom and then was just like pass. He takes his next turn. I untap upkeep draw. I play my Ristic Study back down and I'm like, all right. And I think I played a Devoted Druid this turn as well. And I passed into Magda, wasn't able to do anything. Ethan takes his turn, plays a Bowmaster, triggers my Ristic Study a bunch. He wants to kill my Kinnan. So I'm like, I mean, I guess I would rather draw cards and try to recast Kinnan for 4 than let him get away with casting all these spells and me not draw cards. So I drew the cards, let Kinnan die to the Bowmaster. One of the cards that I did draw was a Transmute Artifact. Ethan passes. There's now, by the way, I guess I forgot to mention, there's a Vexing Bauble on Magda's board. Magda has 0 way to pay for it. He like tapped out, played a Vexing Bauble and tapped completely out and was unable to pay for it. It goes into my turn and I go, well, let's cast the Transmute Artifact. And at this point, Ethan's like, that's bad, because Ethan didn't have any mana open, and all he has was free interaction. Vexing Bauble's down, which means he can't cast any of the free interaction. And he's like, guys, we need to stop this. Do you have something to do that? Do you have something to do that? And then once again, this Rocco player is just like, why does that matter? What is he doing right here? And Ethan's like, he's winning. He's going to win. And Rocco's like, what? And then he's like, I trust you. Casts the Silence. That Silence worked extremely well on me because my Kinnan wasn't in play, and I tapped exactly enough mana to cast the Transmute Artifact and not enough to be able to get Kinnan out or to cast a counterspell here to stop this silence. So then I get my transmute off, I go and I grab a machine god, slam it on the battlefield, have infinite mana, and I pass because I'm silenced and I can't do anything. I'm really just hoping that this Rhystic Study will draw me into some sort of instant to be able to allow me to put the win on the stack, and that's just what I'm kind of hoping for. Goes into Magda player's turn. Magda just decides to jam a Magus of the Moon, and I was like, cool, yeah, play that while I have infinite blue and green mana. And at this point, Ethan's just like, what are you guys doing to me? He's got infinite mana, and you're gonna Magus of the Moon me? All right, whatever. Ethan untaps, and I'm thinking to myself in my head, Ethan's got 2 colored sources. He's got a Mox Diamond, and he's got a Felwar Stone, which can only tap either red or blue because I had a basic island in play. So he should be done here is what I'm thinking. He then Ottawaras my Rhystic Study. It was an interesting move on his part. I think what his thought process was is like, even though I had infinite mana, I didn't try to stop the silence, and I didn't have anything. It didn't look like I had anything to like really like use. So he thought that instead of taking away my infinite mana, taking away my Rhystic Study probably would have been a better idea. Which in retrospect, I mean, like if he cast a bunch of spells and I floated the mana on his like main phase there, I might have like been able to draw a way to win the game right then and there. So I think bouncing the Rhystic Study was probably a fairly smart option. He just didn't equate for me having exactly 1 counter spell being my Fierce Guardianship, which I can hard cast with infinite mana, and 4 bounce spells, which was my hand. I'm thinking Ethan doesn't have the colors to do any of this. This is fine. And then he goes, taps 4 of his lands for 4 red mana and goes, I'm going to cast Stormkiln Artisan. Oh my god, Stormkiln Artisan. My first thought is, why is he playing that in blue farm? And my second thought is, oh my god, there's this color that he needs. I'm going to die. Then he pushes and pushes and pushes. He tries to go for a huge Brain Freeze, targeting himself to mill a bunch of his cards, but also Brain Freeze would give him a ton of treasures because of how Stormkiln Artisan works. It says that whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery, you make a treasure. He was gonna have this like 12 long stack of Brain Freezes, which was going to give him like 12 treasures, and that was exactly what he was going to need to be able to win the game. So in response to his Brain Freeze, I used one of my bounce spells to bounce his Stormkiln back to his hand. He was like, that's fine. He mills his cards. He specifically hits Savine's Reclamation, and I believe either the Underworld Breach was in his hand or it was also down there as well. But the problem was the Grafdigger's Cage, and Ethan doesn't have enough mana now because I bounced his thing. So he goes, well, I'm gonna go Final Fortune, and I'm like, all right. Takes it. He goes to his next turn. He untaps. He plays an Intuition. This Intuition specifically targets the Magda player, and he goes and he gets Orm's Chant, Grand Abolisher, and Lion's Eye Diamond. And I'm telling this Magda player, I'm like, hey, I really think you should give him this Lion's Eye Diamond, because obviously he's grabbing these silence effects because he already has the win, and he's going to try to go for the win, and what he's trying to do is silence me, right? So he's either going to use the Orm's Chant because his silence was already in his graveyard. He's going to use the Orm's Chant, targeting me to turn off the interaction in my hand, which was at that point an Ottawara that he didn't know about, and a Chain of Vapor, which he also didn't know about. But the Chain of Vapor was the one that I was hoping to have to use. But if you give him the Grand Abolisher, I'm just not even going to be able to deploy any mana here. Like, I could float infinite mana, but then he could just move through phases, and there goes my mana, because you can't activate an artifact on an opponent's turn when they have a Grand Abolisher. And so I'm like, I think you should really give him the Lion's Eye Diamond, because if he plays the Lion's Eye Diamond and he cracks the Lion's Eye Diamond trying to cast the Savine's Reclamation because you've kind of forgot about your Underworld Breach, or not your Underworld Breach, if he forgot about your Grafdigger's Cage, which, by the way, he didn't forget about the Grafdigger's Cage. In my mind, I was just like thinking, best case scenario, he forgets about the Grafdigger's Cage, and then we give him the Lion's Eye Diamond, he cracks the Lion's Eye Diamond, he tries to cast the Savine's Reclamation, can't do it, there goes his hand. That was my thought process, but I didn't want to like directly point out that the Grafdigger's Cage was there, and so what I ended up doing was I was just like, hey, I really think you should give him the Lion's Eye Diamond. I don't really think it helps him here, whereas he's trying to silence me. And here comes this freaking Rocco player goes, what does it matter? Why on earth would you give him a combo piece? Are you stupid? Why would you not just give him one of the other things? Why does it matter? And he's just got this attitude that he's just like, I don't want to be here right now, which, to be fair, the Grafdigger's Cage was really shutting him down, but like to have that kind of attitude while I'm trying to help us like not die here was kind of uncalled for. And then the Rocco player somehow convinced the Magda player that because I had infinite mana, I was also a threat and he shouldn't listen to me. And so luckily the Magda player gave him the Orms chant and not the Grand Abolisher, because if he gave him the Grand Abolisher, there was literally nothing I could have done there, right? Whereas if he would have given him, well, I guess there was something I could have done there, but it would have been worse. Whereas if he gave him either of the other two cards, I still had my Otawara ready to go with the Machine Guts effigy, and I can do it at the speed that I want to. Whereas if he grabbed the Grand Abolisher, I would have had to Otawara the Grand Abolisher, moving into combat, and then he could just redeploy it, because like if I didn't have the mana floating, like he would just play the Grand Abolisher, do his thing, move to combat. I would float my infinite mana in response to the Grand Abolisher, and then like while he's moving to combat, I'm like, well, instead of my mana going away, I could Otawara the Grand Abolisher, and but then it puts him back in his main phase, and he's just like, okay, well then I'll just play it again because he had that much mana, and I would have been screwed. So I'm so lucky that the Magda player, even though he decided not to listen to me because it was objectively absolutely correct to pick the Lion's Eye Diamond, even Ethan was just like, yeah, why? There's no world in which you don't give me the Lion's Eye Diamond. I was actually really surprised. But he then Orms chants me, I can't cast spells anymore. I'm okay with that. He's in his final fortune turn. He casts an Imperial Seal, or I think it was Vampiric Tutor actually, on his main phase, puts a Chain of Vapor on top of his library, moves to combat. He's got a Tymna. So the only way that he's going to be able to draw that card to bounce the Grafdigger's Cage, to play his Underworld Breach and win the game right here, is through his Tymna. And I was lucky enough to see the line that he attacked with two creatures, one attacking me, one attacking Magda, that I blocked the one attacking me and I bounced the one attacking Magda. And then I was like, I'm so glad you didn't attack with any other creatures, because if you did, I don't know what I would have done. He was like, why didn't you just bounce the Tymna? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I could have done that. And so like, I'm honestly so lucky that if he attacked with three creatures, I might have let it through. I might have not even seen it, and I might have been dead there. But what ended up happening, he couldn't get that Chain of Vapor. He couldn't get the Underworld Breach down without the Grafdigger's Cage being there. He passes the turn. He dies. Goes to the Rocco player. Rocco player still has literally jack shit in his hand. Passes to me. I make infinite mana. Cast a Kinnan. Chain of Vapor the Grafdigger's Cage, and in response to him, if he wanted to copy my Chain of Vapor, I would just win on the stack because my Kinnan would have already resolved. And so I would just like activate Kinnan, find a Thrasios, find a counter spell, counter it, or just like win on top of it. And I was just able to grind out the game and win. It was a really, really tight game. I was actually like, my emotions like really got really high after that game, because like I was like freaking out. I was like, I'm sitting at 3 wins and a draw, which means I'm guaranteed for top 16. There's no way I'm not making top 16. And obviously I made top 16. I was like 4th after Swiss, and I was just absolutely super hyped. Ethan was really happy for me because he was already locked for top 16, so he was like, yeah, that was a well-deserved win, dude, very nice. Go. And yeah, it was really sweet. There was then like a 30-minute break for like dinner before the top 16, and my like emotions were through the roof. It was crazy. That's kind of where this gets sad a little bit. This is the semifinals. I made it to the semifinals. My first ever tournament of CEDH above, my first ever CEDH tournament above 40 players is a 128 player tournament. I drove 8 hours to be there. And I'm going into the semifinals, and I'm like, wow, I did that. And I'm really proud of myself. No matter what happens here, I keep a hand, seat 1, of course. Here, let's talk about my game. Seat 1, I'm playing Kinnan. I was actually 4th in Swiss, meaning that in pod 4, I was going first because like this player was first, 2nd, 3rd, and then 4th in Swiss. And then so I'm going first in my pod. I keep a hand that is really, really sweet, but kind of tragic how it happened. I kept a 1-lander that was a single blue source. I believe it was Cephaloid Coliseum, a Chrome Mox, and the only green card in my hand that I had to pitch was Veil of Summer. I played land, Chrome Mox, pitched the Veil of Summer, cast my Kinnan, cast a Mox Amber that was also in my hand. So I was holding up 5 mana on the next turn. The rest of my hand, I believe, was a Misdirection, a Tidespout Tyrant, and a Flusterstorm. Oh, no. It was a Misdirection, a Tidespout Tyrant, or no. It was a Misdirection, a Flusterstorm, and a Wandering Archaic, right? Yeah. And the reason why I kept that hand is because I was like, cool, turn 2 Wandering Archaic. That is going to be an absolutely explosive piece that's going to be able to tax the board on every single counterspell that they try to go for. It's going to stop these decks because I was up against a TNT, a Tymna Thrasios, a Malcolm Kedis, which I personally know Malcolm Kedis very well. I've played Malcolm Kedis and I topped tournaments with Malcolm Kedis. I really like Malcolm Kedis and I know how fast that deck can go. So I thought having a Wandering Archaic against that would have been really good. And then this player was actually playing the Wandering Minstrel, the 5-color like land loopy, almost like Lumra, but it was 5-color deck. It was really sweet. What he was doing was really awesome. But I play my Kinnan turn 1, holding up a Flusterstorm and a Misdirection, hoping that I can just get to my turn 2 with my 5 mana, play my Wandering Archaic, and start grinding from there. Malcolm Kedis goes, well, TNT first goes just like land, Esper Sentinel, pass. Malcolm Kedis goes land, Chrome Mox, pitch a thing, Volatile Stormdrake, takes my Kinnan. And then I sat there, and I sat there, and I sat there, and I sat there, and I did nothing. Because I didn't have any mana to play my Wandering Archaic, and the rest of my hand was interaction. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll just sit here. And then the other players played their Draw Engines and their Ristic Studies and their Fish. And they started, and the Wandering Minstrel player actually went turn 1 the One Ring, and there was just card draw over here and card draw over here and card draw over here. And I'm sitting there with my measly little hand of a little bit of interaction. Malcolm Kedis tries to push for an early win by going Final Fortune. Doesn't put a win on the stack on his pre-Final Fortune turn, but then goes Final Fortune, goes into his Final Fortune turn, then puts the win on the stack, which I think that sequencing is a little off, but to each their own. He then gets stopped by me because I tell everybody how his deck works, and I tell them when to interact, and then literally these 2 other players had like 12 cards in their hands, and they both were just like, I don't have a counterspell for this. And I'm like, are you guys really kidding me? Are you guys kidding me? All right, whatever. I played my Flusterstorm, and I stopped Malcolm Kedis, and Malcolm Kedis dies. I finally get my Kinnan back, but by then, the Wandering Minstrel player had a One Ring down and untapped and tapped it and drew 4 cards. Not to mention, he drew a bunch of cards off of a fish. He puts his win on the stack, and me and TNT just don't have enough interaction to stop him. He wins the game, and I'm just like, gah! There's just literally nothing I could do in that game. Like, there was just my Kinnan gets taken turn 1, and then like the only like payoff that I had in my hand cost 5 mana, and I was sitting there with 2, and then I think I drew a couple lands. I think I got up to 4, but 4 still wasn't 5, and so oh well. It was a really fun day. I had a lot of fun. I played a lot of Magic, and I played a lot of good Magic. This game just didn't end up the way I wanted, but you know, you can't really get everything that you want in real life. But it was really sweet playing in this tournament. I had a ton of fun. I want to just shout out all the players that made it up there that day. It was such an amazing day playing with, especially all of the players that played against me. I had an absolute blast playing with you. Even if I kind of insulted you in this video, I'm thankful that you guys were playing up against me. I was having an amazing day, and you guys were also just helping me have an amazing day. And so I just wanted to say thank you. This was a very fun experience, and definitely a calling to me that I'm going to be playing more big CEDH tournaments in the future. I'm going to be covering more big CEDH tournaments in the future. So just be prepared for that. And I guess we could cover the top 4. Ethan won. Heck yeah, Ethan. Go Ethan. Woo! He was just nice to me in my fifth round. So I was rooting for him. And then like on our drive home, my buddy was watching the stream a little bit, and he goes, Ethan's got a voice of victory, and he's got a breach, and he's winning. And I'm just like, yeah. But it was an amazing experience. I had so much fun. I'm so thankful to everybody there, specifically also NorthStarCEDH as a company as a whole. It was such an amazing time being there. I had such an amazing and fun time playing up there and with them. I can't wait to I hope they put on another huge event like this. Maybe next summer I could go up again. And that's all I've got. So thank you guys so much for watching. I had an amazing time doing this tournament. Look forward to more videos. I feel like I want to post more CEDH content in the future. If you guys sat through that entire video, thank you guys so much for watching. That's crazy. Like, especially because like you guys don't know me very well. I'm fairly new at this. I'm gonna be posting like a really long video, and if you guys watched it all the way through, that's really, really inspiring and cool to me. But thank you guys so much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you guys later. Peace out.